Yo, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Men of the Kingdom podcast. It's me, Kyle. This is my co-host, Aaron. If you're new to the channel, we want to say welcome. The purpose of this show is to help men live successful lives according to God's design. And if you're one of our faithful returners, we want to say thank you for that. Aaron, new episode. We're breaking into the 20s. Officially, episode 21, I should say. How you feeling today?
I'm good. I'm super pumped for this one. I think this episode is going to be the epitome of why we wanted to start this podcast. So I'm pumped. I'm excited. You got some new swag on. You're looking good. You're feeling good. Let's make this happen.
Let's go. Yeah, I don't know if you guys can see it on the camera. Got our official Men of the Kingdom prototype merch. This isn't the official one. We were just kind of playing around with some ideas, some of the things we potentially want to wear on the show or potentially down the road. I'll give to some of you guys that watch the show. So if you can see it, Men of the Kingdom here. So Aaron touched on it a little bit when we were kind of formulating the idea for this show over a year ago. You know, we really wanted to help guys, and we wanted to do it in a practical way where people could watch the show, take what they're learning, apply it to their lives, and again, live a more godly life that lives their life to the full potential. So when we were thinking about what could we talk about in 2021 or 2022, excuse me, it's January, beginning of the year. This episode came to mind, especially for Aaron, because what we're about to talk tonight is something you guys can pick up on. Really apply to your life, and it's going to impact you. And Aaron's one of the guys that comes to mind when I think of someone who's really good at vision and planning their year. So this episode is going to be all about planning your year, and we're going to walk through some practical steps, and it's based off this book called Your Best Year Ever, fitting enough, by Michael Hyatt. So if you have had the chance, or if you haven't, check out our last video, episode 20. It was 10 books you should read in 2022. This is one of Aaron's 5 books that he recommended. And this isn't one of those things where he's just throwing stuff at the wall. Aaron's read this book. He reads it every year around December time as he goes into a new year, and he really implements the steps. So we're excited to jump into it, kind of quickly go through what does the book kind of talk about. We don't want to spoil it for you, but we'll go through the main points. And after watching this episode, you should be able to take some of the things we're talking about, start doing it, and hopefully give you vision for the future, where you want to be and how you can get there. So, Aaron, without any further ado, why don't we jump into... Jeez. Sound like a bullet was about to come through my back here. Man.
Jump into how to plan your year. So
how to plan your year, thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to start too with some scripture to tie this back to kind of the dual purpose of the show, right? We want to help men succeed, but we want to do it in a God-honoring way and to live godly lives. So the scripture that came to mind is Proverbs, which is, if you're watching this, that's the book of wisdom. So this book, The Best Year Ever, it's a good book of wisdom, but Proverbs is the ultimate book of wisdom. And Proverbs 29 says, where there is no vision, the people perish. And I think that's really true. I think that that's something we talk about all the time, is a lot of problems that young guys have is that they just have no vision for their lives. Yeah. And that could be big picture, getting asked, what does God want for my life? What am I called to do? So those are questions you have to figure out. But practically, we promise that if you stick with us through the duration of this video, you will walk away knowing how to structure your year, knowing how to set goals, and knowing how to kind of close the gap between where your life is now and where you want it to be. So I'm super excited. I wanted to share that first, that I do think this is biblical, having a vision, making plans. You know, that was the way that God worked in a lot of the big men in the Old Testament or New Testament. You look at King David, Solomon, a lot of the iconic biblical men, they had visions from God that they executed. So
one thing I'll say too on that point, you said a lot of guys, I don't know what the exact word you use, to me, get into trouble. We've all probably heard the phrase, you know, idle hands are the devil's playground. And when you have nothing going on in your life, if you're not working towards something, especially as guys, women too, but especially guys, we're so driven to achieve and get things done. And when you have no goals or vision for your future, it's really easy to start getting sidetracked, pulled away to things that will love to have your attention, love to have your energy. And there's a million things you can get into that could ultimately ruin your life. Yeah. I have friends close to me personally that I was really close with at one point, and they didn't have goals. They weren't moving towards something. They got into trouble, and you see it all the time. Everybody knows someone like that. So
seriously,
apart from just, this isn't going to be, okay, here's how you make more money. We'll talk about certain goals, but really it's, you get one life. And if you look on the news any day, there's celebrities, Kobe Bryant, for example. Yeah. Who would ever thought he seemed invincible? This guy made millions of dollars, one of the best athletes in the world, and just like that, it's gone. Right. So we really want to encourage you with this episode to maximize the time you've been given, because ultimately we don't know how much time we have in this earth. So kick it back to you.
That's great. And again, just slight stall, and then I promise we're going to get into the content. But when we broke down this process and the tips, we tried to split it up in ways that we felt aligned with our strengths. So Kyle, he's a huge action taker. He's always got to-do lists. He's cranking through it. I live with him. I can see he'll come home from a work day where he starts his day at 5:00 in the morning. He's getting to the gym before he goes to work. He's going to work. He's cruising through tasks. He's coming home and he's taking care of things. He's doing laundry. He's planning things out on the side. He's calling his family. He's doing all this stuff. So we kind of focused it on some of the things I'm going to be talking about is more big picture, more vision, structure, things like that. And Kyle's getting more into the nitty gritty of the day to day. So with that, we're going to start with step 1, which is taking a step back and actually asking yourself, where are you at now? Determining where you currently are in all the key areas of your life. So I'm going to list these out in order of all the different domains that we feel are important, starting with spiritually. Obviously, the purpose of this show, help you succeed according to God's design. Where are you spiritually? Physically, your physical health. Emotionally, socially, your relationships with your friends. Financially, the status of your money. Vocationally, that's a fancy way of saying career. Romantically, family-wise, and then avocationally, which I think a simple, more commonly understood way of saying that is your hobbies. Yep. And then lastly, intellectually. So when it comes to a successful life, obviously living your spiritual life is a huge part of that, but there's all those other domains as well. And we're big believers in you want to succeed in all areas. We want you guys winning, with your family, winning and leveling up, helping your church grow, growing spiritually, having fun with your time, your hobbies, all that. We think that you can win in all these areas, but it starts with really asking yourself, where are you now? So what we wanted to do too is kind of with each of these steps, we're just going to talk through it each other. So Kyle, is there, do you feel, this is a question I was thinking, I feel that a lot of people are inclined in certain areas to naturally succeed and say, hey, maybe there's 2 to 3 domains that just kind of come easy to you. And then there might be some other domains that you say, if I don't really plan that out, if I don't think about that consciously, that domain starts to slide. So is there any domain that for you that you can maybe just kind of talk about, hey, this one comes naturally and, this is where you're at? And then some other domains that you think are less natural that you might have to focus on more to succeed?
100%. Yeah, it's a really, really good question. So, really good question. So, as you were kind of naming off those things, a couple things came to mind. You said you have to know where you're going first. And sometimes it's really hard to measure a few of these. So, you look at financially, some of those things are pretty easy to measure. Right. Because you can kind of look at your bank account and say, do I have money numbers or not? Where am I at? Some of the ones that might be a little more harder to measure are the spiritual goals. It's like, how do you know if you're growing spiritually or where am I at spiritually?
That's a really good question, too.
So, to go back to your question, there's one that I think I'm still working on, but it comes fairly easy because it's been ingrained in me my whole life, and that's the physical, more the health side. I could do a much better job with eating. Aaron lives with me, so he sees all the sugar I eat. It's bad. But in terms of the just getting to the gym, he kind of mentioned in the beginning, I get up pretty early, like to get to the gym before work. Like, it's not really a challenge. A lot of people, if I said, hey, get up at 5, go to the gym, it's, I can't do the mornings. For me, if you said, hey, Kyle, stay up till midnight, it would be the same reaction. I can't do it. It's so getting up, getting to the gym is not hard. What is a challenge sometimes with the physical stuff is one, the diet, the eating right. So I would say that one comes easier. Some of the other ones, I think I have to be a little more disciplined. I mean, as I go through that, it's almost convicting because I think I could do a better job in all of these.
Totally. We always can too.
For sure. I would say, not that it's hard, but I think the one I have to be the most intentional with is the spiritual side of things. One, because I think it's the most important, but two, it doesn't always come natural to people. It's hard when you're getting pulled in a million different directions. You have your time being pulled here, your mind can be different places. So it's hard to really slow down, quiet yourself, and just get in the Word. So I would say the spiritual one, it's funny because we're on a Christian podcast here talking about it. But if you want to grow in any of these areas, you have to be intentional with it. So we'll get into that in a little bit, but just to answer your question, I think physically, just like the health portion comes fairly easy, but the spiritual one and a few other ones, like you have to be intentional. But I would be interested, not to bounce your same question off you, but I want to hear you because I feel like I look at you and I don't want to steal your answer, but I feel like you do pretty good in most of these. So I'm curious what your answer is.
Well, before I try to break that down, one thing that you said that I thought was a good point that I hadn't really thought about is that even like physical domain, like that could break up to a lot of things. Yeah. And same with like financially, you could say I'm really good at earning money. Like I keep getting promotions, I have side hustles, but you could say I'm really bad at managing it, or I don't know how to invest. Or, with your family, you could say, I feel like I have a good relationship with maybe my mom, but my dad and I don't speak much, or, I don't talk to my siblings that much. So
Right.
I think that's something is step one, we want you to audit every single one of these areas and ask where you are. But to Kyle's point, even audit it deeper of if you're not where you want to be physically, does that have more to do with the fact that you don't know anything about nutrition, or is it you can't get to the gym? Because those problems are different and, it needs to be customized to you. So for me, I feel like socially is one that comes supernatural to me. Quite honestly, sometimes I almost think I have to be careful where naturally I could plan my entire week where every single night I'd be doing something with friends and leave no time for the podcast or no time for calling my family or, getting in the word, doing all those things. So that's one that I think comes naturally to me. When I look at this, one that I have noticed is a struggle that I've really been more intentional about the last couple of years is my hobbies. I think that when I look at my life, it's really easy for me to neglect that in terms of if I have a free weekend. One of my big hobbies is I love playing golf. If I have a free weekend, if I'm not intentional, I'll find myself, maybe doing family events or just other things that are all good things. But ever since I've started doing this, I always set a goal around one of my hobbies. And I find that it helps me kind of blend a bunch. So when I play golf now, I do that with friends or with family. So I think that's kind of mine. I definitely relate with what you said physically. I don't think I could operate in all areas of life if I wasn't staying healthy and staying active. But the spiritual one too. I mean, I think if you're not really focusing on that, you really don't know where you are spiritually. And I don't have a perfect system as to how you measure that, but I think you just ask yourself, are you becoming more willfully obedient to God's design or less? Is your natural inkling to live in alignment with how the Bible calls you to live, or is it more what your senses are telling you and what you physically want? That's really, I think, the only way you could gauge that, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I would say to an extent, one thing I always come back to when it comes to spiritual maturity and growth, if you're familiar with the Bible, if you're not, look it up. It's called the fruits of the Spirit.
Oh, yeah.
And, it's basically people who...
Would be a good episode, too.
Yeah, really good episode. But just a few of the fruits of the Spirit are love, joy, peace, patience, goodness, kindness. Some of those things, you probably heard that. So look at your life. Am I loving people more? Am I more patient with people? Or am I usually on edge? And you can kind of see, and that doesn't mean, some days are worse than others, better than others in certain areas of those, but you can kind of gauge yourself and say, hey, is the man I am today growing and different than the man I was yesterday? And you look forward a year and 2 years, hey, the man I want to be then is going to be different than I am now. So you can kind of feel it out, and it is a harder one. And I'll say too, this probably goes without saying, but Aaron and I are pretty similar guys. We live fairly similar lives, but his goals on all these areas are different than mine. And my goals are probably different than yours. So when you say, okay, the physical is such an easy one because everyone talks about it, it's not always, hey, losing weight. Or, hey, I need to gain weight. What Aaron's might be trying to achieve is a different from me. So just keep that in mind as we're going through these. And even when you're talking with friends or comparing notes, it's okay. Hey, maybe your goal in one of these is different than the other. So it's there's no wrong goal. It's one, having the goal, having the vision, but more importantly too, the why behind you want to do it. I think that's important to keep in mind. We'll probably touch on it too. Why do you want those? What's the motivation? And go there. So anything else on the first point? Number one, again, is to determine where you are in the key areas that we just named.
No, the only thing I would say just to close up step one is I would go through every single one of these key areas. We can write them in the description, and I would rank those 1 to 10. And I would look at where are the low numbers, where are the high numbers, and then that kind of helps you move on to step 2.
Right. No, it's really, really good. So just to recap, step number 1, determine where you are in all key areas. I'll name them one more time. It's spiritually, number 1, physically, emotionally, socially, financially, career, romantically, family, hobbies, and finally intellectual or learning, education. So what do we mean by that? So we're going to jump into number 2. So this is an interesting one. I think it's really, really important when we think about, okay, here's my goals for my life. I think one of the things that prevents people from achieving goals in whatever area they're trying to do is what the book talks about is limiting beliefs. We all have them, whether you, probably when I said that, there might be something that comes to mind. So let's take, I'm just going to take a practical example because I think a lot of guys struggle with this. Let's go to romantic. So this could be a limiting belief. Hey, I can't date any girls right now because I'm not good enough, or I don't make enough money. We'll say that. And maybe you are at a point where, hey, financially you have room to grow and before you feel like you can date. But whenever you think of, there's always these beliefs that are popping into your head. And it's funny, actually. So Sammy, Aaron's fiance, she was at our church's, it was our first formation class. And they do a very similar practice where they go through their top 3 lies that they tell themselves. So like, I'll try to give a practical example. It's like, God could not love me because I mess up or I sin a lot or whatever to that extent. And then you go to a source of truth, and in this case, it's the Bible. What does the Bible actually say? And like a verse that always comes to mind is, there's no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. So it's like, oh, I had this limiting belief, but that's not what the truth is.
Right.
So when you're going through these, step number 2 is address your limiting beliefs. Go through each one and be honest with yourself. And I think an important practice too is if you have really close friends like Aaron or a couple other guys in my life, like, hey, where do you see me, or what are some things I've said that might be limiting my growth in certain areas? And there's probably things they can point out whether you realize it or not.
For sure.
So go through it and then try to find the truth. Like, hey, is this really true, or is this a lie I'm telling myself and it's preventing me from getting there? So number 2 is know your limiting beliefs, but more importantly, have the truth to combat that. And it helps to have really good people in your life.
So I had to mention this because this is something that isn't on the notes, not even part of the episode. This is a bonus one, but something I think we both hold each other accountable for is we're really diligent about only speaking about what we want. And I think that goes back to a limiting belief too, is that really what would you ever gain by speaking what you don't want into your life? If you say, I don't want to get rejected from by that girl, or I don't want to be single, or I don't want to lose my job. It's like, well, what do you want? You say, I want to ask that girl out because I think she's attractive, or I want to grow in my career. I want to get stronger and I want to put on muscle, rather than I don't want to feel skinny or uncomfortable in my skin. And I think that's a way that you can help your friends out. And the Bible talks about that too. Let only wholesome talk come from your mouth. And I think that's a way that, you've even checked me a couple times. Sammy's done that to me before, where I'm saying, I don't want this, and just stop in your tracks. What do you want? So I think that's a way that you can identify some of those limiting beliefs too, is when you're speaking and focusing on what you don't want rather than what you do.
I'll say one note on that. It was pretty funny. We were leaving church this last Sunday. He does this. We were walking up the hall to get back to the parking garage where we were. And I can't remember what Sammy, his fiance, said. She said something. He said, huh? Wait. And she had to recorrect herself with the affirmative what she did. But it was just funny. So he does do it to me, to Sammy, and it was just kind of funny. So yeah. Number 2 is recognize and list out your limiting beliefs that prevent you from being where you want to be.
Cool.
Aaron, number 3, my friend.
All right, moving along here with step number 3. So if you only watch and listen to one section of this, this is probably going to be the most important section. And with this, I say that because if you're watching this show, odds are you're somebody who you like to improve yourself. You care about where you are in life. You want to grow. You want to be a better man. So I'm not going to lecture you about why that's important. Odds are if you're spending your free time listening to us talk about these things, you probably already know that. But I also can relate too well with the feeling of setting goals that don't work. And for years and years, I set goals. I would just pick, I want to make more money, or I want to get in better shape. And I genuinely think that this book and this system completely changed the way I looked at goals. I'd always heard of, and if you're watching this video again, you've probably heard of SMART goals. Now, those are specific, measurable, attainable, time-keyed. I think that's it for the SMART ones. I'd always heard about that growing up. I don't think that's a great system. I don't think it's complete. And I actually want to share what this book calls the SMARTer system, that I think is a lot better way of setting goals. Did you have something to add there?
No, I was just listening.
Okay, cool. I thought you might have had some good wisdom from the SMART from a high school class or something.
Still try SMART.
I wanted to keep going, but then I realized SMART's only 5 letters. So, all right, each one of these is a different thing. So we'll use the physical because I think it's an easy one to use as an example. So the difference between I want to get stronger, which again, going back to step 1, well, what does that mean? Where are you at now? Do you want to get stronger legs? Do you want to get stronger to be a better sprinter? Or do you want to be a power lifter? Do you want to get stronger, in all your lifts, in just some area? So a different goal could be, I want to bench press 185 pounds. Again, knowing where you currently are, you find out that your max bench press is 135 pounds. So now you know where you are, you know where you want to be. Your limiting belief might be, I don't have the ability to get stronger, or I'm just not that strong of a person. Okay, we're going to scratch that. We're going to have a liberating truth of, I know where I'm starting, I know where I want to be, and I'm going to set a specific goal of what that is. Right. So measurable, that's very measurable. You're starting at 135. Every week you can track whether you're getting closer or further away to that final number. Attainable, that's where we want you to be setting goals that push you, but we don't want you to be setting goals that are, if you're benching 135, you're probably not going to be benching 400 pounds in a year or whatever the case may be. Realistic kind of goes through that same measure. I think attainable has to do with more the fact of, when you've actually reached that goal. Yeah. Realistic is just figuring out where it's pushing you past your comfort zone, but it's not something where you're going to feel bad if you don't achieve it. And realistically, there's nothing you could have done. And then the T is time bound. So this is an important thing, is that I would recommend, a mistake a lot of people make that I've made before is they set all their goals in January 1st and all of them are supposed to be done at the end of the year. Yeah. That's really not a good formula. Think of at work, if you have projects coming in and they were all due on the same day, right, that would stress you out beyond belief. And even the last two letters, exciting and relevant. So the reason that I think it's good to spread out your goals, especially we live in Minnesota, the seasons are very different. Very different. So the amount of daylight you have, the things that you're doing, all that change month by month. So I think it makes sense to try to naturally align your goals with what's going on. Yeah. If your goal is to be running a lot, right now, tomorrow, it's supposed to be 30 below zero.
Is it really? I didn't even know that.
So if you had a running goal that you had for tomorrow,
I'm going to move that one
I would move that one.
To June, maybe.
Yeah, reschedule that.
Yeah.
So I just think that you always want to be considering what's going on externally. Like for me right now, I'm wedding planning. So there's certain things that are just difficult to do around the constraints of, okay, some of my free time has to be dedicated towards that. Right. So the E is exciting, meaning that these goals should personally excite you. And then the R is relevant. So a good example, again, I'm wedding planning, really excited to get married later this summer. But if I had a goal that was due right around the same time that my wedding was, that would be putting a lot of stress on, should I be spending this time wedding planning? Should I be spending this time achieving this goal? Right. Another example that he uses in the book is if you're in medical school, it might be a tough time to start a new business because you have all your free time studying. Yeah. So all your goals need to work together. I'll quick read through these again. We'll probably drop it in the description, but every single one of your goals needs to check all these boxes: specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, time-bound, exciting, and relevant. So with that, I'm just going to give a few examples of goals that I've set and the difference between two types of goals. So I'll breeze through this because I think it's pretty simple. There's two types of goals. There's an activity goal, which is something you're going to be doing on an ongoing basis. And then there's an achievement goal. Difference between those, as the name suggests, activity is something that doesn't have a completion date. You're just going to be keeping doing it. It might be for 1 quarter of the year. It might be for a month. It might be for 6 months. An achievement is that one that I gave the example of, I want to bench press 185 pounds. When you've achieved that goal, you've marked it off. The habit goal or the activity goal for that same situation could be, I'm going to bench press 2 times a week, right, for six weeks or 6 months, whatever the case may be. So another different example, activity, I will read for 30 minutes per day, every day after work. Achievement, I'm going to save $5,000 over the course of 2022. So the last thing for this, and then I'll wrap up this point, and Kyle alluded on this before, but for every single one of your goals, you should make a list of why it's important that you achieve this goal. Because it's kind of the sad reality, but nobody else is going to care about you achieving these goals as much as you are. Right. So if you don't know your why, and again, that's going to be different for everyone. For me, I'm talking about my wedding. I could say, I will get down to 15% body fat by June 1st. My why for that goal would be so that I can look and feel my healthiest on my wedding day. So I can be incredibly healthy and vibrant for the people that I love. So that for the rest of my life, I will look absolutely jacked in my wedding pictures. And then you think when those 5 a.m. alarms go off in the morning and you have the choice of sleeping in or going to the gym, you're not just saying, I'm going to go to the gym. You're saying, today I'm going to go get after it so that I can look and feel great on my wedding day and have the celebration of my life. Right. That's a lot more motivating. That gets me out of bed. So find your why, have smarter goals, a huge part of making 2022 the best year of your life.
Yeah, really, really important. I think the why is one of the most important things because, like Aaron said, if you don't care about them, nobody else is going to.
Seriously.
And you need that. Why? When things are going good and you're feeling good, it's really easy to get up and go do these things.
Oh, yeah.
When times get tough and you're going through family struggles,
you're
whatever
tired.
that looks like, and you're tired. And
Sin's getting in there.
Yeah.
Smacking you about, smacking you upside the head.
That's when you have to look to your why. And like Aaron said, write them down. So you can go back and say, okay, this is why I'm doing it. We need that constant reminder. So really, really good point there, Aaron, with So let's jump into number 4. And this has to do with daily action. And we just read through a book that church gave us, reading through right now, called The Common Rule. And there's one quote the author got from there, and it was essentially along the lines of, how we live our days is ultimately how we live our lives. And I don't know why that stuck with me, because I think sometimes, especially when you're setting these long-term goals, just thinking like a year out, but even if you go 1, 3, 5 years, you think, okay, I'm going to be there one day. Whatever those goals are, you will never achieve them if you're not living your day aligned with what your goals are.
So true.
So we're gonna try to roll through with an example here. So let's take the fitness one. I think it's relevant to a lot of guys right now, especially our age. What are you doing each day to get to the goal? So I'll take Aaron's example. You're benching 135 right now. You want to get to 185. What are the daily action items you're going to take to get there? It's great to have that goal, but if you're not taking the actual steps to get there, you'll never make it. So you already touched on it a little bit, but getting to the gym each day, having those goals in the gym and tracking that stuff. So for me, like Aaron touched on, I'm one of those guys that's really hard to sit still. I like to be doing things. I have to feel like I'm checking boxes and like getting things done. So the daily action stuff, the actual doing of it, I don't really have a problem with. Sometimes I need to kind of get reined back in a little bit and say, okay, let's take a step back. Where do you want to be ultimately, big picture wise? So in terms of just your days, I would, Aaron does a good job of this too, is the night before, everything's wrapped up. You can do it either early in the morning, you can do it the night before, but think through the next day. So tomorrow, in this case, when we're recording, it's Wednesday. What do I want that day to look like? And have a plan for your day. Because if you don't have a plan for your day, people will find plenty of things to fill it up for you. So you have to be intentional with, how do I want to spend my time? And is it going to ultimately get me closer to where I want to be at the end of the year, at the end of the month, whenever you have those deadlines for your goals? So I would just encourage you guys to take a step back. Sometimes it's hard from what you're doing, and just make sure you're aligned. And you'll feel that. I know sometimes when I'm doing a lot of things, I'm like, gosh, I'm busy, but I'm not productive type of thing. Even if in your work life, where it's like, man, I'm checking these things off. But at the end of the day, those things probably don't matter as much. They're not the big items. So prioritize your big 3 items for the next day. Hey, what do I want to check those things off? And if I said everything else that I would like to do or that I normally do didn't get done, if I got these items done, I'd feel content and productive with the day. Focus on those things. Keep the first things first. And then if you have time after, hey, go do those other things. So prioritize your day. Take the time to prioritize the day and actually do it. When you get to the end, you'll know if you're on track because you'll feel good about it. You'll realign your goals and say, okay, I actually made a difference and I'm moving to where I want to be down the road.
Yeah, that is legit. So step 4 then, just making sure that your day-to-day actions are always aligning with those big goals.
Yes, sir.
That is awesome, and that's something Kyle does a really good job of. And I love what you said, too, of how I think a lot of times when we don't want to do, like, the things that actually move the needle, we'll start finding, I mean, we're doing laundry, you're cleaning out the fridge.
Dust the ceilings today.
Man, washing windows, calling grandma, whatever it is, you can just waste so much time doing that. So,
and I'll say, too, I think you might have touched on it. I think sometimes we shy away from some of those big items. One, maybe they're hard, but sometimes they're intimidating. Maybe one of your goals is to, hey, I really want to ask this girls out. This one girls out. Just start with one. That could be one of your goals. That's just throwing a crazy example out there. But every guy knows it's hard. You're afraid of rejection. You're afraid of all these things. But once you start doing things, say you ask her out, it goes terribly, no problem. You did it. Or it goes great, hopefully. Or, I want to, the fit thing, I got to get to the gym. And you start doing these harder things, it becomes easier. And I'm telling you, like you said, once you start checking those off, momentum. Life is a momentum ball rolling down a hill. You start doing these things, you start wanting to attack those bigger issues, and you build the confidence that, hey, I don't have the answer right now, but I know I can ask the right questions, talk to enough people, and I'm going to get the right answer to get to where I want to be. So I know it's a little intimidating at first, but jump right in. You'll figure it out. And as you go, you'll become smarter. It's going to make you sharper as a man, too, as you go through these areas of your life and figure things out. And there's probably another younger guy looking up to you who's going to have questions one day. Seriously. So think about that, too, when you're going through this. One day, maybe it's your son, maybe it's your daughter, maybe it's a friend. There's going to be people asking the same questions. So just jump in. It's intimidating, but What's the worst that can happen?
Heck yeah. And I even just think too, it's like if we never do things that are outside of the scope of what we know how to do, it's like that leaves no room for God. No. Like God wants us to be doing things that we have no idea how the heck we're ever going to do them. Great plug. Watch that episode with Greg.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a great example of somebody, he had no idea how he was going to do anything he's doing. No. Now they're housing 10, 12 people, serving thousands of meals a week. And he said on that episode, point blank, I had no idea how any of this stuff was going to happen.
Right.
So yeah, that's great. So, okay. Just to kind of recap here, we've unpacked a lot. The first step we talked about is you're talking through determining exactly where you are in all those key areas. The second one is you're recognizing and you're reframing your limiting beliefs. Yep. The third one is you're setting great goals that are smarter, that check all 7 of those boxes. And then the fourth one is you're making sure that your daily actions align with all those goals. Okay, so now I hate to break it to you, if you've watched this far, you're feeling good. You're feeling like I got a great system. This can still go sideways. And the way it can go sideways...
Thanks, Aaron.
I know, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but that's what we're here for. We're keeping it real with you guys. So you could do all those steps, and the way it could still go sideways is if you're not measuring your progress. Yeah. So one of the quotes that I know Kyle loves, I love this too, we're marketing guys, this is very true in our world. What gets measured gets managed. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is that, again, we're going to keep picking on, hey, if you're benching 135, we hope that you get to 185 because we're giving you the formula here. So if your goal is to get to 185, you started at 135. Say your goal is to get to 185 by July 1st. If it is June 20th and you're only benching 150,
better get some mascator and get to work, boys.
I hate to break it to you, but you are not on course. If you say, hey, I'm going to tithe $200 a month this year, and it's March 31st and you've tithed $75, that's a problem. Yeah. So what we're going to do is we're going to give you a system here that's going to prevent you from getting too far down the wrong track. Yeah. Another way to look at this is you don't want to climb a ladder and find out that it was up against the wrong building. Mm-hmm. So the system that I think has absolutely transformed my life, it's a military system. AP, if you're watching this, shout out to the Army. I just about said the few, the proud. I think that's actually the Marines.
Cut that part.
Yeah, we'll scratch that out. But the after action review, it's actually a military process. Very simple. What you look at is what did you want to have happen, what actually happened, and what did you learn from that you're going to improve and change to get that result that you actually wanted the last time. Sounds incredibly simple, but how often do we not do that? Something goes wrong and we say, I'm a failure, I'm a loser, it just got screwed up. No, what we're here to tell you is that when you fail, it's not because of anything with you. It's just because you don't have the right strategies. You're not learning. You don't know what you need to know to do that thing. So analyze, say, hey, listen, I asked out this nice young lady. I got rejected. Why could that be? It's like maybe, you didn't know her that well, or maybe it wasn't the right girl. Maybe it could be a number of things. Maybe she has a boyfriend, whatever. So you look at, what did I want to have happen? I wanted to get a date. What happened? I did not get a date.
What do you need to do? You need to get them to break up so you can swoop in.
That's a different episode.
Different episode.
So thinking through, okay, what did I want to have happen? What actually happened? And then what did I learn from this? Whatever that is, you reflect on it. And then the next time you do it, you have those lessons to draw from. So for me, these are all the ways that I measure my goals. I do it on a daily basis. Now, when I say I do it, I wish I did this every day. I need to. But daily, you just quick run through your list of goals, all those different domains. Take 30 seconds in the morning, look at all those goals. Weekly, this is the one that's probably the biggest for me. Every week, Kyle can tell you, I talked about this in another episode. I spend 30 to 45 minutes on Sunday reviewing every single one of my goals. And then I have a system for this, and I'm actually going to give you guys the system that I use. I'm going to have a link to it in the description of the video. Use that Google Doc, make a copy, and start doing this week by week. I absolutely promise you, if you follow this, your life will be completely transformed in the same way mine was. So every week, I look at a few things. I look at my list of goals, and then the first thing I do is I lay out my wins for the week. So every day I have a journal on my phone. I track every single day. I track what I did, where I was. It's super fun to look back 5 years ago and say, wow, I forgot I was living in that town with that person doing this, with my free time. So every day I just track, even if it's for 2 minutes, recorded podcast with Kyle. Worked from home, got a great workout in the morning, just things that I want to remember. We've talked about that too. So then when I do this, I look at my wins of the week, I go through all my journal entries and I pull, okay, I recorded an episode of the podcast this week. I hit a PR in the gym. me and my fiance had a great date night on Friday, whatever it is. I want to remember those wins because I look at, my goals. What did I want to have happened? Well, that's what happened that I actually wanted. From there, I go and look at, okay, based on all my goals, what things did I maybe not address? Maybe if it's the financial, Kyle's a photographer. Maybe you wanted to set up an appointment and book somebody and you didn't get them an invoice. So in your improve areas, you say, I should have got that invoice out this week. This next week, I'm getting that invoice. Right. Or you say, I felt tired all week. This week, I'm going to turn my phone off by 8 o'clock. I'm going to be in bed by 9. Or if you're struggling with the sin, you say, I'm falling into this temptation. This week, this is what I'm going to do to work on that. Right. Or I'm going to meet with my pastor, whatever it may be. You're going to list out those actual improvements that need to happen to get you back on track. And then lastly, lay your whole to-do list out for the week. Every week, I set my big 3, which are 3 big actions that align with those yearly goals. That's what you talked about. And then that to-do list drives my daily to-do list. So you wake up Monday morning, you should have your whole week planned out on paper. Day by day, what's your big 3? Your appointments are booked, your schedule's booked. If you can do that, I promise you it will absolutely change everything about your life. So I'll breeze through the quarterly one really quick. Once a quarter, I think you should look at all your goals and remember the 3 R's, which is rejoice, recommit, or revise. Essentially, what you need to do, look goal by goal, ask yourself, am I on track for this? If you are, that's great. You should celebrate. Another big thing we're not even going to talk about, but celebrate your wins. Yeah, that's something we talk a lot about is, again, no one else knows you're doing this. No one's going to care as much as you do. You have to celebrate, or else why keep grinding? Why keep doing all this if you're never going to stop and pat yourself on the back? So that would be rejoice. Recommit would be, I wanted to bench 185 pounds. I'm only at 135. Maybe I'm at 150. It's halfway through the year. So you've put on 15 pounds, but you still have 35 left. You say, I'm going to recommit. I'm going to change my strategies. I'm going to try a new program, or I'm going to start lifting chest 3 times a week, or I'm going to get a workout partner. Whatever strategies you have to recommit to that goal. Right. Or the last one, you could say, hey, I'm benching 170 pounds, but I really have this business that I want to start, or this podcast I want to start. So I'm going to get rid of that goal. I'm just going to revise it, and I'm going to add a different goal to take its place. So don't feel like you're stuck to these goals. Life changes. Right. You might have an idea that comes to you. We talked about that in a different episode, is that, successful men, they're creators. So if your ideas change, if your priorities change, totally fine, but you just have to make the conscious decision rather than just giving up or, quitting before you even get started.
Yeah, really, really good point. I think that is interesting because you will go through life phases. Mm-hmm. I think there's a couple that are really big. There's obviously the initial one. You go into high school. That can be a big change. Then it's graduating high school into college. And I remember for you, especially I can speak for myself, like my interest and what I was focused on at those seasons of life, drastically different from where I'm at now. And even now, like the different phases Aaron's in. Mm-hmm. He's engaged. He's a couple years older than me. Mm-hmm. What he's thinking about, what his goals are probably a lot different than mine. Even though we live together, we live similar lives. Mm-hmm. Life stages change, and as you go through those, your goals where you thought you really wanted to do something, it's like, hey, that's not where I want to be. It's okay to change and revise it. So I think that's an important point.
Yep.
Really, really encouraged by this episode. Is there any last things before I wrap it up you want to mention, or are you feeling good? Man,
I think that's good. I mean, we didn't really get to talk, too much kind of through each of these steps. I felt like we just focused on the content, but I don't know, man. I think for me, like this is it. Like if I had to give somebody advice for like, hey, how do you change your life? How do I get something that I want? I don't know. Is there anything kind of hanging out there that you didn't think we addressed, or what's kind of on your mind as we wrap this one up?
Yeah, you kind of touched on it in the beginning of the show. I would just say, to wrap everything up, no matter what goals you set in an area of your life, they have to be God-guided. Mm-hmm. God wants you to enjoy this life. So when you think about your hobbies, maybe you want to learn to play guitar, or you want to pick up line dance or whatever. Those are great things, and they can be a blessing. So I would just encourage you, have an idea for what you want, but pray through these things, especially when it comes to like the relational stuff, whether it's with a romantic partner, with family, friends, the social, like where does God want you to be? It's great to know where you want to be, but ultimately where does God want you to be? And I think that's an important note, too.
Definitely.
Your goals might change in your interests, but where God might want you and need you might change your goals too. Like I can think of a number of people who, hey, I'm going to go start this. I'm going to be here. Boom. God throws a wrench in the plan. And at the end, when they look back, it's the biggest blessing ever, but they were not expecting it. It was really hard at the moment. So just be open, to the possibility that...
I mean, Travis, right? Like, the last guest we had.
Yeah, he was doing well in his job. He was a business consultant, leading people, and then opportunity came up where now he's executive pastor at our church. So it's like you never know. So be willing to say yes to opportunities come up if they align with what you want to do, but really seek God's wisdom. And if you seek him, he will answer you. And that goes down to the first one's spiritual goal, spending time in the Word, spending time with other believers, but just praying and quieting yourself. I know I could do a better job with that, but when you can slow down and quiet, a lot of answers will come to you. So we hope you're encouraged by this episode. We hope it's a practical thing. We don't want you to just hear these steps and then not do anything. It can be a life changer if you implement it and be consistent with it. And we're always here to offer advice.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say too. We want to hear about your goals. If you're not comfortable dropping them in the YouTube, text us, call us, message us on any of the social media platforms. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing too, is like, we want this to be a community. Yeah. And we've even talked about, like, I don't know if you guys would be interested if we did like an in-person meetup where we share goal ideas, we talk through where we're at in life, we push each other, we bring resources in. I mean, if you're watching this, if that's something that you'd be interested in, let us know. Yeah. Like, we want to be people that are developing godly men. Just thinking when we started this, our vision was we wanted to develop a community of guys that it was just clear that they were just on fire. They're just on mission. They live differently. They treat people differently. They're just succeeding in all areas. They're blessing other people. That was something you said that I think is on my heart too, is that, there's no reason to achieve these goals just for the sake of, I want to do it. When you're growing, when you're making your life more than what it is now, pour out into other people. When you get blessed, be a blessing to others. I just think about that. I think that's something we could both do a better job of too. We've been insanely blessed. We've been helped out by so many people. Yeah. And I just think even looking yourself in the mirror and asking, how could I bless other people through the blessings I've been given? I think that's a great reminder that you were kind of speaking on there too.
100%. Yeah. So last thing I'll say, we have a D group connection. It's for people who lead connections. We get together once a month. And it kind of came up in the conversation just around, it's kind of been on my heart lately. And we kind of touched on it in an episode where life is short. We all hear it and stuff. But think about, say you live a really long life. Say you're blessed to live to 80, 90, 100 years old. You live this long, great life. You've accumulated all this wealth, all these things. At the end of the day, when you pass away, just like everybody, it's gone. And there's a funny quote. It's like, you never see a U-Haul behind a hearse. And it's true. What you have in this life, you can't take with you. So just think through that. It's okay to have money and, have nice things. But how can you use that to be a blessing for the kingdom, investing in the kingdom and other people who are to come? So just when you're going through these goals, just keep that in mind too. Like, hey, I might live a long life, but eventually this will be gone. So why does it matter and why am I doing it? Ultimately, it's to point back to God and what he's done for us. So just want to leave you with that encouragement. We want to thank you for checking out the episode. We love getting on here, sharing some of the things we've learned with you. Hopefully that you can pick up on it. And we always have a good time with it. So episode 22 coming up soon. Thank you for tuning into this one. We had a really good time. Hope you enjoyed it. And until the next episode,
keep advancing the kingdom.